Affairs and Security Policy. Dr. Huma Baqai will be in conversation with Ikram Sehgal. I'll quickly give their introduction. Professor Dr. Huma Baqai is the rector of Millennium Institute of Technology and Entrepreneurship in Karachi. She has a background in social sciences, international relations, and political analysis with extensive media experience since 1999. Ikram Sehgal, a distinguished individual, is a former Pakistan POW who escaped from India in 1971, demonstrating exceptional courage and leadership. I think we should start the discussion now. Yeah.
Well, it is about Pakistan's foreign policy, Pakistan's security policy, and then perhaps the first question that I'd like to put up and go into conversation about is there a distinction between security policy and foreign policy? Because Chaucer said there is no compartmentalization in policy. The internal policy is where foreign policy is dictated, and foreign policy is an extension of the domestic policy. We have another dimension because of where Pakistan is located and the kind of geography that we have had to tackle with, which some call is a blessing and others now say is a baggage, but it's largely how we navigate our foreign policy and our security policy. So the first question, Mr. Ikram Sehgal, would be that do you see this compartmentalization or do you see them very closely knitted?
It is closely related. Unless you combine the two, you're going to have a problem. Because I think, first of all, there's a misunderstanding about geoeconomics and geopolitics. Right? Because I just want to go back to something that happened to me in 1970. In 1970, in the cyclones of East Pakistan, I was flying a helicopter taking the governor around to one of the islands. And I was very tired, and the governor got out to visit, and I strapped myself, kept the thing, and I was dozing off, and I saw a lot of young kids with blue eyes looking into the cockpit. So I said, this is an island of Bengal. What are they doing then? I found that the descendants of the Portuguese, the Dutch, the Arabs, etc. And they were there since the 16th century. And they were shipwrecked there, there were pirates there. What was they doing with geopolitics in the 16th century? It was geoeconomics. And it stayed geoeconomics till the middle of the 19th century. And when geopolitics started taking over, when people started making empires out, the British Empire, the Portuguese Empire, etc., etc. And then it all changed direction after the Second World War and the interim period. So I think if you look at it, geoeconomics, geopolitics, all these things, we've taken that things are all related to each other. And they must be taken as such. One must prevail over the other. But at the end of the day, what prevails is the interest of the country in question.
Interest of
the countries. Now, you think, why now the West investing so much money into India, right? Because of the vast population. It's economics, right? Because they've got these multinational companies coming in, bringing in huge amounts of this thing, et cetera, right? Later on, it became geopolitics in the sense contain China, right? That's why I think it has to be.
Well, just to be the devil's advocate here, till the 20th century, we were convinced that geoeconomics and geopolitics is compartmentalized. And Pakistan was largely seen as a geostrategic state, and its foreign policy was a reflection of its geopolitical requirements. So we were India-centric. All our foreign policy was geared around that, and then the Afghanistan saga, I call it, happened. And then we became an Afghan-centric state. And what did that give us? That gave us a 3-border war. We have an eastern border, we have a western border, now we've fenced, and we have an internal war where we lose people every day. We have shahadats every day. So and of course you brought up Dhaka, and I know you have a link there. The 71 happened, fall of Dhaka happened. Wasn't that because we were so completely myopic in our view of what was happening around us. And I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. India was able to see beyond the geopolitics.
No, I don't agree with that. I agree. With India, East Pakistan and turning to Bangladesh was pure geopolitics, right? When, Moshayed and all mentioned, Nehru said, this nation is not going to survive 6 months, and nobody expected this finest experiment of nation of its time, East Pakistan separated by 10 to exist. But I think there were, after 1965, when India was fought to a standstill in the western borders, and they did nothing about East Pakistan. Actually, they could have overrun East Pakistan because there were only 4 brigades, infantry brigades, they're stretched out, etc. That thing. Then they realized it is now time to separate the two. And they went about it very methodically. The Ganga hijack, when they made sure that oversights were completely done. They were, they were about, let me put it to you, there were about 30 flights a day, 10 to Dhaka from PIA, from Lahore, from Karachi, from Islamabad. And ultimately, they've succeeded. This is not a single flight. There's this thing, etc. So it was geopolitics. Now, why they've gone into geoeconomics is not because of other things, because of China. China is investing so much of money into power stations, into roads, into other this thing, that India has to play catch up with China. So they do not lose this thing. But let me tell you very frankly, and I think it was mentioned yesterday, I think there is, if you take this thing, you will understand that the two rub against each other. And when they rub against each other, it is the predominant interest, national interest of the country that takes over, right? And for example...
So I'm going to put in a very small question.
Yes.
What is in the best interest of Pakistan today? Because we know that wars in today's world are not just fought on the conventional fronts. Yes, we have the 6th largest standing military. Yes, we are a nuclear power. But are we in a position where we're being actually asked to compromise on our core interest because we failed on the economic front? Let me be blunt and honest.
No. First of all, we have not failed on the economic front.
Okay.
Right? If you go, and please look at the chart about 2 days ago, we show the bank's profits, right? There's no bank, except a couple of banks, that have not declared an exorbitant profit, right? The share market today is broken 52,000, right? The problem is that we have wrong policies geared to being dictated by other people. That we must not, for example, why we cannot get independent is because we tax fuel, we tax electricity, right? Because of this, we do not close down the illegal, even the legal foreign exchange. This country does. If you do these fundamental, simple things, you don't have to be there. The economics is not.
What has taken Pakistan so many years? Because these are foregone conclusions. This should have been done ages ago. The 16 months previous to this government's takeover was a disaster. The people on the streets suffer. Yet we say, okay, our indicators are improving. How sustainable are those indicators? And please, Ikram Sehgal Saab, also tell me that for how long will we be able to sustain what you've just identified as indicators of economic success. Why I say this is that because I think there's a serious rethink that is required, whether it's our foreign policy, whether it's our security policy. Once again, it's the economic front. We're lagging there.
Huma, let's look at ourselves. Today we've got a 28 million ton wheat crop coming in. We can feed ourselves very easily. We are importing wheat, I think very correctly, as a buffer stock to make sure the prices are kept down. We have shortage of nothing except, let's say, oil, which is correct, crude oil, and we have shortage of palm oil, I think, which we can substitute. These are the two things. Where we lack, let us say, fundamental courage is to cut down on our luxury imports. We have no business importing cars the way we do. We have no business doing it.
Please link that to our security policy
Because
and our
it
foreign
does.
policy.
Because what you're doing is you're diverting. You see, when you import a car, you don't import a car alone. You have to, the car imports spare parts. The spare parts come in, right? Tires are smuggled in. Then you have this thing, etc. And if you go today outside, you'll see about 40 models of cars standing there, right? Where India did the right thing. They did not allow import of cars, even though they had a very strong automobile industry, till such time that they could really afford it. So I think we have to have fundamental courage on making sure that certain things we do are the thing. I ask you one question. You take TikTok, right? What is the productivity to the nation from TikTok? Nothing. It's zero, right? Even though the maximum the telcos earn is on, because everybody's on TikTok, everybody's on this thing, etc. So I put to you a wild question. Why don't you tax the air? Why don't you tax, ether, right? Because that will not roll down. It will not affect. If you have tax fuel, it will affect production. If you tax electricity, it will affect production. When the cost of production goes up, your cost of exports go up. The cost of exports go up, you do not become competitive in the world market, right? So I think fundamentally you have to take very courageous decisions. Some of the decisions have been taken in the last few months, and that is why you see
they've been taken in the last few months.
Few months, right? We lived in a perception. We fed a perception. When General Musharraf took over, right? Whatever, I don't say the reason why he took over, etc. But at that time, the economy was in a horrendous position, right? We had to go out and get, etc., etc. And frankly, if 9/11 had not happened, we would have collapsed. 9/11 helped us in the sense that money started flowing in, dollars for this thing, etc. That money was there. And the second time around, again, the economy was troubled. The earthquake happened. Then money again came in great deal. But what did we do? Instead of going in for power stations and bridges and roads, we went for fridges, air conditioners, cars. We are and the telephone.
So we are essentially a consumer nation.
Because feel-good economy.
So let me go back to our topic, which is the security policy of Pakistan.
Yeah.
How inclusive is Pakistan's security policy? Is our security policy people-centric? Can you have a secure state if you do not have a people-centric security policy? I would like to think that we still have a very myopic security policy which is pivoted on the tangible elements rather than education, healthcare, people, so on and so forth. And fast forward 21st century. It's a crisscross of geopolitics and geoeconomics. We cannot survive with this myopic vision, so to say. So that's my understanding.
I agree with you, but I think by default, not by design, by default we moved into more and more into the center side, right? And why has that happened? That has happened because we are very well aligned with China in many things, and we have relied on China for most of our national security material. But at the same time, the West has realized also, even though we do not realize and we do not take advantage of it, the West cannot really do without us, right? Whatever happens, we are a bridge. We are a bridge that is there. Can you imagine a nuclear state becomes unstable, right? And unstable, and that also what they call a Muslim nuclear state become unstable. And then you have, like what's happened to the Soviet Union and the CIS countries, that you have people peddling nuclear armaments all over the place, etc. So I think by default we moved more into the center, and I think if we continue on this course, you'll find that our policy will be let us say, that will not compromise national security that was doing so previously in a way, like you've brought out so well in your book, that it will not be that thing. I think we will be much better off if we keep shifting into the center side.
So let me bring you to the latest two events perhaps three, that are rocking the world. The developments in the Middle East, how will that impact our security policy and also our foreign policy? The Ukraine war, and last but not least, something which is happening outside streets, I had to take a detour to get here, is sending the Afghans back. Illegal Afghans back, if I may add.
Put yourself into the head of an Israeli planner today. What's his worst nightmare?
Well, the New York Times framed it beautifully. They said from a 6-day war to an 8-front war.
His worst nightmare is the only nuclear-armed Muslim nation in the world should come and take sides. All right? That's their worst nightmare. Do not dispel what you have. You know, it is very easy to cut down, to criticize ourselves. We are the only Muslim nuclear-armed nation in the world. We are Israel's worst nightmare, right? It is how we play our cards to the Western world to ensure that we stay.
Ram Sehgal sahab, hold your horses. Are you actually saying the scenario of a third world war is real? Are you actually saying that Pakistan may become an active participant?
I am not saying that Pakistan may become the active participant, but people work on perceptions. When strategists plan out something, they take into consideration if this happens. Now, for example, I'll give you one thing. Hamas has attacked. Hamas very clearly attacked on its own. They kept it totally surprised they attacked, right? You think Hezbollah is going to keep sitting back for 1 second, right? That is another nightmare of the United States today, that if Hezbollah gets involved in a bigger way than the skirmishes on the border, then you have think of a wider war. You have more volunteers. You can see the television and see the volunteers that are lining up in Iraq, in Iran, right?
That's precisely my question,
so my
sir.
point is that is why it makes it easier for us in a way, in the sense that the West will realize that it is in their interest to, first of all, to come to a ceasefire, and number two, to come to a settlement, a comprehensive settlement, which will ensure Israel's right to exist and Israel's boundaries. But the point is that has been kicked off. You cannot stop that. If Hezbollah enters the war, you are going to have a wider conflagration.
Do you think a chapter has turned, a page has turned on Palestinian resistance? It has a new life?
Yes, I think that 100% a new life, because if you see the streets of the world, which has no relevance to actual fighters on the ground, but if you go and have a look and see the television thing of things beaming out of Iran, of Syria, out of this, even Turkey, the volunteers gathering to go over this thing. How long do you think Egypt, the rank and file, will keep out of this? How long do you think that they will keep on ignoring the fact that people are dying the way they are dying in Gaza? So I think that particular thing has gone, that is why the Americans are now, instead of ceasefire, they're calling it a humanitarian pause.
Well, they say that they want this humanitarian pause because they want whatever they're doing in Israel to remain tolerable. And they continue with the bombing. So it's very strategic. The humanitarian aid, the corridors, the pause is an extremely strategic tactic to continue the bombing in Gaza. That is a general consensus, not coming out from my side, but generally from the Western columnist as well. We just have 5 minutes.
Right.
One last word on what is your take on government's policy to send back the Afghan illegal nationals here?
I think it's very correct.
Is correct?
I think absolutely. I think that we should have started this 30 years ago.
We failed. We
no,
tried
but
it twice.
We could have done it in a better way. We could have first of all set up holding camps, done exactly what Iran did. Iran kept them within 10 miles of the border, never allowed them to come beyond 10 miles
So
of the
we should
border.
have camped them day one.
We should have started
Right.
camping that thing and made camps out then move these people into those camps. Instead of, saying that give 31st October.
Give them a free hand. We have last 5 minutes. I'll be happy to take questions. उर्दू में भी बात की जा सकती है. ज़रूरी नहीं है कि अंग्रेज़ी में सवाल हो. जी सर साहब, please.
I will make a comment which may not go well, but we have perhaps one of the best foreign services in the world, and we don't have a representative talking about navigating foreign policy and security policy at the panel. Anyway, you see, navigating foreign affairs is a very complex business which one acquires over years of training and experience. I'll give you two examples. We have navigated our foreign policy by keeping India out of the Security Council. We have navigated our foreign policy by supporting all the movements for decolonization in North Africa, in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. We supported their campaign for independence. Now, recently, our foreign policy that we are navigating is that we have not recognized the Taliban regime. We are trying to build a consensus in the region for the Taliban regime to be recognized.
Thank you, sir. I don't know if we've not recognized them. We are definitely recognized as facilitators in the global community. Sir, I need to take more questions. Thank you so much. We have at least 4 or 5 more hands, sir.
I think, yes,
please,
we need more
the lady in
people.
the front and then that gentleman.
Assalamu alaikum. I wish this session was longer because there's so many interesting facts that are coming out of this discussion. But I had one question about the Afghan refugees. There are many who argue that they haven't known anything besides Pakistan. They've grown up here, they were born here. And there are many who claim and say that they have the right documentation to be living in Pakistan. How do you think this could have been managed to avoid, for example, we know what the situation is for girls and women in Afghanistan. It's like literally giving them a death sentence to say, go back. Was there any possible way, or is there any possible way to retain human resource that would actually be useful from that community in Pakistan?
Ram Sehgal sir, would you like to comment on that?
I think you go first. And then.
Well, I know it's, okay, Salma. Okay, sure. Okay, go ahead. Then I'll try and respond to both.
Assalamu alaikum ji. There's this aspect of a lot of these young children being born in Pakistan and under the law, they are Pakistani nationals. So how would you couple these two concerns together? The girls coming here, not being registered refugees, but the second generation Afghans who are born and bred in Pakistan, and now they're in the middle of nowhere. Thank you.
So I have a very simple answer to both these questions. And the answer is Pakistan first. We are in a situation where of the 24 attacks that happened, suicidal attacks that happened in Pakistan, 14 of them were done by illegal Afghanis. Yes, it's a humanitarian issue. Yes, we are sending women back to a regime which is not human at all. All of these facts are there, but we are also losing soldiers every single day. A lot is not reported in the media, but the situation on the ground is so precarious that I think Pakistan does not have an option. To both your questions, I have only one answer, and that is Pakistan first. One, you have a health infrastructure and an education infrastructure which is on the verge of collapse. We can't provide healthcare and education to our own people. And by the way, the rich Afghanis go to India for treatment. The poor Afghanis who can't pay come to Pakistan for treatment. How is that fair? मेरा बच्चा हॉस्पिटल की सीढ़ी पर पैदा होता है. मेरी माँ बगैर किसी हेल्प के बच्चा जनती है. मैं कैसे ये बोझ बर्दाश्त करूं? मेरे 23 मिलियन बच्चे स्कूल से बाहर हैं. So I think there is a judgment call, and that is why we are being very, very, considerate about it. We are not rushing it. We are saying that please, you can come back, but come back with legal papers. It is only making border controls more stringent. So let's take a look at the larger picture and see what we can do. The time is really up. Two last questions very quickly. Yes, sir, that gentleman, he's been raising his hand for a while. आप सवाल पूछना चाह रहे हैं? आप और फिर आप, and then we'll close the session.
Please go ahead.
आप दोनों आप कर लीजिए, फिर हम दोनों साथ लेके फिर wind up कर देंगे.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Sir, I want to, sir and madam, first of all, thank you so much for this very invigorating session. I want to circle back to the topic at hand, navigating foreign affairs. When we talk about the demarcation of institutions, we often talk about church and state. There's a third, which is the bank, or in this case, industries of commerce, or the business community, all in their own way governed by diplomacy. Last year, as we all know, India engaged in armed conflict with China. But that being said, on a parallel front, their trade actually increased between the two nations. When we talk about sort of curating or tailoring our foreign affairs and security policy, do you think that while we might somehow not really see eye to eye from
You have to be quick.
from the church or the state, don't you think that this is a great vacuum for the business community to sort of come in and to be able to sort of bridge the gap between the two? Thank you.
Okay, the role of the business community, they should be more proactive. That was the crux of your question. You very quickly. आपकी आवाज़ नहीं आ रही है.
मैम इसराइल अपने ब्रूटैलिटी को इस उससे जस्टिफाई कर रहा है कि हमास ने सिविलियन को अटैक किया और हम एक्सपल्जन को इस अगर उससे जस्टिफाई करें कि सिर्फ 5 बंदे जो थे वो अटैक अफ़गान ने किए इसलिए हम इनको एक्सपेल कर रहे हैं तो जो इनमें जिनको हम एक्सपेल करें उसमें तो मोस्टली एंटी तालिबान है तो इससे तो हमारे इसको मतलब वही जस्टिफिकेशन होगी जो हम उसको दे रहे हैं और दूसरी बात की आपने कहा कि जिनके पास पैसा है वो इंडिया जाते हैं और जो गरीब हैं वो इधर आते हैं तो क्या हम एंटी पुअर हैं या एंटी अफगान पॉलिसी है ये तो एंटी पुअर हैं कि
ना हम एंटी पुअर हैं ना हम एंटी अफगान हैं हम प्रो पाकिस्तान हैं as simple as that and please stop comparing Pakistan to Israel. I mean there is no comparison. We have the largest number of refugees in the world. We've hosted them for 30 years at the cost of the destruction of our societal fabric. Please look at the larger picture. We have to, the question on the role of businessmen coming to the fore, and I think
yes, I think yes, businessmen should have a lot of say in sort of the thing because obviously business flourishes when there is open borders in that sense that there is intertrade, and it is a fact that China and India trade a lot together. But the point is, India does not want to do that. India is cutting down a lot of things, but they are forced to do that because almost 28 to 30% of India's exports depends on things coming in from China, right? So that is their based on. So India cannot avoid it. It's not that they don't want to avoid it, and they're trying to cut down. But I want to have last word on as far as the Afghan thing is concerned. Have you people watched cricket matches between Pakistan and Afghanistan lately? Right? These are the most ungrateful people in this world. That, you know, we nurtured them for 30, 40 years, really, since 1980s. And today, the Taliban, their officers are going to the Indian Military Academy, cadets are going for training, you know, right?
So there are some hard facts that need to be factored in. You've been a wonderful audience. Ikram Sehgal Saab, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Da